have some fun, guys. From KQED, along with the California State Association of Counties, this is a special broadcast. With 1 year before Californians choose a new governor, we're thrilled to bring you a conversation with 6 of the candidates vying to be the state's next leader. I spoke with the group Friday, December 5th at the San Jose Convention Center. Here is the conversation with former State Controller Betty Yee, businessman Steve Hilton, former Representative Katie Porter, former U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra, businessman Tom Steyer, and State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond. Our first topic today is going to be the county safety net, a huge issue for everyone in this room and frankly statewide. Mr. Steyer, I'd like to start with you. You know, California companies are in part carrying the U.S. economy. Tax revenue is actually exceeding expectations, and yet we have ongoing budget shortfalls. Would you support fundamental changes to our tax system, and if so, what would they be?
So Donald Trump is delivering a gut punch to the counties of California and to the people of California through his bill. He's going to kick 1 to 3 million people off the Medicaid rolls. He's going to take away food benefits from hundreds of thousands of Californians. Those are services that we absolutely must deliver and that the people at the local level, counties, must deliver. So how are we going to meet that budget shortfall? I am proposing to close the corporate real estate tax loophole that has been on the books for 50 years, which enables them to pay $10 to $15 billion per year less than is reasonable. That is something where we will have to go to the people and pass it through a proposition. I have done that 3 times. 3 times I have taken on the tobacco companies, the oil companies, and out-of-state multinationals, and won every time. This is a critical thing to do. It's what I know how to do. If the counties are going to be able to deliver these services.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Steyer. We got there.
Okay.
Secretary Becerra, as Mr. Steyer notes, the social safety net has been severely curtailed by the president and Republicans' budgets. We're seeing these ongoing budget deficits, and counties are often being asked to pick up the slack. I know a lot of you are citing affordability as your main concern. So how would you staunch the pain while still making things better for Californians?
So Marisa, I think the first thing we have to acknowledge is that the pain that we suffer isn't just within the family. The entire state suffers. Those who are from rural counties understand it better than others do, because when you can't get health care because one of your hospitals closes, you have to then travel probably an hour, 2 hours just to get decent care. And so the last thing we can afford to do is go backwards just because there's chaos in Washington, D.C. I have already said I'm going to be the healthcare governor for the state of California. We will not go backwards on healthcare. The moment we start telling people, because there were cuts to Medi-Cal, that people will not go in with Medi-Cal insurance to pay for their healthcare, they're going to start coming as uncompensated care. Guess who takes that on? The county hospitals. Guess who has to pay? The taxpayers. And if it's not the taxpayers, guess who else will pay? Those of us who have insurance, because the cost will be shifted from those who can't pay to insurance carriers. And so we're not going to go backwards. There's money in the system, including in healthcare, and we'll get this done. We cannot abandon our hardworking families who build this state most.
Thank you.
There is money.
Thank you. Superintendent Thurmond, similar question to you. I mean, as the Secretary points out, Medi-Cal is a huge portion of the state budget, and there's an estimate that 3.4 million people could lose coverage under the tax plan that was passed this summer. What's your plan?
You know, I spent the better part of my career, as I said, working with foster youth and working with counties that provide various services. And many of you used to get waivers to be able to provide more services, and we don't have that support at the federal government anymore. And so one of the reasons that I supported Prop 50 is because I believe that if we change what's going on in Congress, we can reverse the effects of the big ugly bill to make sure that we allow those who were kicked off of the rolls of Medi-Cal to be able to be re-enrolled in Medi-Cal and to be able to have access. We know that Medi-Cal is a federal entitlement. That means if you qualify for it, you should get it and should have opportunities to have access to health care that is covered under Medi-Cal. I believe that we've always had a revenue problem in this state, at least since Prop 13 passed. If you track Prop 13's passage, you'll see that local governments have been without dollars for public safety, for health care and schools. And that's why I've talked about taxing billionaires to get us new revenue. We cannot make it just alone on income tax as we currently have it. We have to bring more revenue to help our counties, to help our schools, and help our cities.
Thank you. Controller Yee, I know affordability is a huge tenet of your campaign. I'm curious what trade-offs you would make when we see the federal cuts coming and the state budget deficit.
Sure. You know, one thing we haven't talked about is how do we continue to grow the economy here in California? You know, one of the ways that I think we can do it, even in the midst of cuts, is what investments are we willing to make? And one area that I really have been so mindful about, particularly having visited so many of our rural areas, is how do we grow the healthcare workforce? When we can do this and actually look at potentially different ways of delivering services to communities, I think that is a way that we can grow our economy. We are also a technology leader. I view California as being the industrial climate leader as it relates to climate technology. And that work can be happening anywhere. We can have manufacturing of that technology here. We can have entrepreneurship opportunities. But I don't want us to slight the fact that we have just innovation happening all throughout the state, and that we ought to harness that so that we can grow our economy and become more resilient against any federal actions and federal cuts in the future.
Thank you so much. Mr. Hilton, you talk about wanting to cut taxes and reduce the state budget. You say you want to bring it back to where it was pre-pandemic levels. As a businessman, you know that costs grow every year regardless of whether, you know, we do anything. Healthcare, people cost a lot of money. So what would you eliminate?
I just want to start by saying I agree very much with Betty about the need to focus on growing the economy and incomes within that, especially for working class Californians who've really lost out over the last few years. I very strongly disagree with Tony when he makes the point that it's a revenue problem. As you noted, Marissa, they've doubled the budget. The budget of the state of California has doubled in the last 10 years. Is everything twice as good? No, things are worse. We have the highest poverty rate in the country, the highest unemployment rate. The budget, I think I'm right, Betty, in saying in the last 5 years, gone up from 180 billion to, 320 billion plus. We have tested to destruction the idea that spending more money, taxing more, spending more leads to better outcomes. The outcomes are the worst in the country. What would I eliminate? We need to reduce taxes for working Californians. First line of my tax plan, your first 100 grand free of state income tax. I would cut the increase of $7 billion that Gavin Newsom proposed this year for the bureaucracy in Sacramento that takes power away from all of you. That's where I would start.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Representative Porter. Yeah, actually, you can. Thank you for.
Mr. Hilton, for your comment.
Can we get his mic on?
If I could get my microphone for my 30 seconds, please. Do I have to break dance to get it? Okay, all right, here we go.
I mean, if you want.
I'm all for growing the economy and creating job opportunities. And we have sectors here that can help Californians stay in our state. If we help to grow, we have 85,000 jobs in computer science that aren't being filled right now. We have a $3 trillion sector for biotech. And we have to help Californians in the Central Valley and every part of our state get into those jobs. But government has to be able to provide services to its people. And the pandemic is one of the reasons why we've seen an increase in services. And with all due respect, Mr. Hilton, I think what you said shows a lack of understanding about the safety net that government actually provides.
Thank you.
We have to make sure for our city.
I don't want to keep going back and forth here. I will allow you 30 seconds, Mr. Hilton, and then we are going to give Representative Porter a chance to get in here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Look, the safety net, it's on the screen in front of us. We're talking about it all the time. It's supposed to be a safety net, not the norm. What kind of safety net is it on Medi-Cal when we're talking about places in the state where 40, 45, 50% of people are on the safety net? No, we need to address the causes of poverty. We need to lift people out of poverty, grow their income so they don't need the safety net. By the way, Gavin Newsom cutting mental health spending in Prop 1 in March last year, taking away mental health budgets from counties. That's outrageous.
Okay, Representative Porter, I'd love to get you in here. I mean, we're talking broadly about the budget. It is mostly Medi-Cal and K-12 spending. Do you see a world in which if you're governor, you have to cut, or are there other revenue opportunities?
Well, both Medi-Cal and our schools have traditionally been core local responsibilities, helping to think about how to deliver that health care and how to make sure that kids can get an education and have opportunity. We're not going to get better by doing worse. At the same time, how we deliver these services does need improvement. I think there's not been a willingness sometimes in Sacramento from career politicians, people who pass these bills, to go back and look at them and make sure that they're working effectively. I'm heartened that the State Assembly is going to have an oversight committee, and I hope it does some oversight of the money and the programs that it is rolling out. But fundamentally, the ultimate goal is to grow revenue in California by growing our population. If we have more people who are working here, who are thriving here, who are making ends meet here, that helps us address our budget situation. We have an aging population in California, and that is stretching the social safety net further. If people can make ends meet, if they can get a job, if employers can afford to buy insurance, then we don't have to put so many people on our social safety.
All right, I want to move on to disaster preparedness. I appreciate you all keeping to the 1 minute. I know it's a lot. Governor Newsom is in D.C. today, actually, meeting with members of Congress about wildfire recovery for Los Angeles. In the 11 months since those fires, the president has not moved forward with a recovery package for survivors, and neither has Congress. Mr. Hilton, you said you have a good relationship with the president. What would you do to get these funds?
So nearly a year ago, Gavin Newsom stood in the smoldering ruins of the Palisades, where I was yesterday afternoon, and told us that he, Gavin Newsom, not Donald Trump, not the president, Gavin Newsom was developing a Marshall Plan. This is the quote, a Marshall Plan to rebuild in LA after the wildfires. And now he's saying we can't do anything because Donald Trump won't provide the money.
I mean, all due respect.
What happened to the Marshall Plan? The federal government, I've been there, I've been all along the last few months seeing the progress that's been made and the lack of it. The EPA, the Army Corps of Engineers, they came in right away. They did the clearing of the waste, the toxic waste removal. They did their part. It's our state government and local government in LA that's let us down so badly.
All right. Historically, Controller Yee, the federal government has stepped in to help in disasters in all states. You know, you, along with all the Democrats on this stage, are no big fans of the president. I wonder what your strategy would be, or if you agree with Mr. Hilton that the state should go it alone.
Well, you know, I think California actually has been doing a pretty good job of being proactive in terms of preparing for disasters. And I want to just give kudos to the counties, because I think the Prepare California initiative that many of you have been a great part of, to just provide your own local plans and mitigation plans, and looking at how you build local resilience and really getting the community involved. You know, it's our local governments that are really the first responders to any disaster. And when that happens, I think the state really has to understand that we have a role to facilitate that happening at every turn, every time there is a disaster. The preparedness and the response, we should be really living a culture of preparedness with everything that we're doing. And we will fight for our federal funding. Look, FEMA has been through all kinds of machinations under this administration, but for us, we just have to be sure that we're at the ready, so that all of our communities know that there will be first responders at every turn when they need it.
Thank you. Representative Porter, as Controller, you mentioned FEMA is also in tumult. The president has talked about maybe eliminating it entirely. How could the state step up in the absence of this? Should they have to? You were in D.C. How would you try to handle this?
Yeah. The whole idea of disaster relief is to recognize that we don't all need to have everything. That is too expensive. We can't all have all the resources to face every disaster. It's a shared responsibility, and the goal is when a disaster hits your area or your community, the federal and the state government come in and they help support you. That's a compact that we make, and we're given tax dollars to do exactly that. I do think there are areas of improvement at FEMA. When I was in Congress, I ran a bill to create a national disaster safety board to look after a disaster and understand not only why it occurred, but whether our tax dollars were being spent well following a disaster. So there are things to improve with FEMA, but I wouldn't take it away. I do think the California Office of Emergency Services does a good job. I have seen them in action, and I think we do need to continue to fund that. If we don't, then we're just shifting shifting responsibility once again downstream to our counties and cities to try to provide for disasters, which is neither cost effective nor going to be able to provide enough help.
Yeah, thank you so much. Secretary Becerra, you were Attorney General in Trump's first term. You sued him a ton of times. I'm curious how you think the state should be responding in this moment, how you would lead in terms of disaster funding specifically in these fights.
So first, you're right. I ended up having to sue Donald Trump over 120 times because, as he has done today, he has failed to provide the federal resources for the job that the federal government is supposed to do in partnership with you and me. There is a time when there is a crisis when we don't ask whether you have an R or D next to your name. We don't ask what part of the country you're in. If it's a disaster, FEMA's supposed to be there. And this administration, the Trump administration, has failed to be there for California. We pay more in federal taxes, you and I and all of our population, to the federal treasury than does any other state. We have a right to have our fair share of those taxes come back home. When I was Secretary of HHS, we went to Lahaina in Maui after the fires. We came to Los Angeles during the wildfires. We have disaster relief programs at HHS, FEMA, but because we are there as a federal family, and to not be there is to fail to do your job. And we have to demand it, whether we sue the Trump administration or work in partnership, we'll get our funds.
Excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. Mr. Steyer, I want to ask a slightly different question here. After the LA wildfires, obviously, huge neighborhoods have been destroyed, and the governor's been very aggressive in issuing executive orders aimed at speeding recovery in fire zones, waiving zoning laws, things like that. Do you agree with that approach? Would you continue that if we unfortunately have future fires?
Of course I do, because I think that the speed of response is critical in any kind of disaster. But I want to go back to the point about Donald Trump. This state sends $80 billion net to the federal government. We have a disaster. The governor has said it's $34 billion that we are owed. This is not normal. I have been standing up to Donald Trump for years. I built the Need to Impeach campaign to get 8 million people in the first Trump administration to agree, including 1 million Californians, that this was an unlawful administration. What he is doing to us is so far from normal. He is not treating California like an American state. He is not treating Californians like American citizens. And this is not a normal thing. This is a stop the world moment where, in fact, we need to stand up to Donald Trump. It's the only thing he understands. That's why I pushed so hard to join the governor on Prop 50.
Thank you. Superintendent Thurman, you've been in a statewide role here overseeing one of our biggest policy initiatives, of course, K-12 education. Is there any changes you think that the governor should make in terms of its posture and its relationship with the federal government in order to try to get these types of funds?
Yeah, as you point out, disasters become the new normal for our schools. And every time there's been a disaster anywhere in any of our 1,000 school districts, we've sent help and resources to help them. The reality is that California can't go this alone. And while we have to be tough on the administration, and I've sued this administration to restore and claw back $1 billion that were lost for California schools, we still have to show that we can work with the administration and with the members of Congress. And as governor, I will work with the members of Congress to work to get a package for disaster response by emphasizing the point that was made a moment ago, that these aren't partisan issues and that California is not the only state that's experiencing it. As we work with the members of Congress, we will help them to see that there are folks, not just in California, but on the East Coast, in the South, in the Southeast, and others who experience disasters. And we need help from FEMA, and we need a package to deal with disaster. We also need to prepare ourselves better by hardening and doing more burns and being prepared for disaster.
Thank you, Superintendent. Well, let's move on to housing and homelessness, obviously another huge issue for everybody in the audience and our state. Representative Porter, I want to start with you. In 2018, there were about 130,000 Californians experiencing homelessness. Now there are over 187,000. Can you point to one thing you would do differently from the current governor in terms of that crisis?
We have to work to prevent homelessness from occurring in the first place. Otherwise, the problem continues to grow. Once someone experiences street homelessness or chronic homelessness, the costs of helping them back onto a path of being housed and being productive get much more expensive. So one is focusing on prevention. I started my state service during the foreclosure crisis here in California, helping people avoid foreclosure and avoid eviction, which is the most cost-effective and most humane way to deal with this problem, rather than allowing them to get further and further into a difficult situation. The second thing is we need to devote funds to multiple kinds of homelessness solutions. That means funding for interim housing that can be put up quickly, and that we hopefully, when we begin to build more housing and housing costs come down, we won't need as much homelessness housing. Right now, it all goes to permanent supportive housing, and it takes too long and costs too much, with the result that you don't have a place to put people who need shelter.
Thank you. Secretary Becerra, on that note of sort of shorter-term emergency housing versus longer-term stable housing, we saw the Trump administration change grant conditions for continuum of care funding. This is a huge pot of money that's really helped counties and cities provide long-term funding. This is part of a sort of broader debate that's not entirely partisan over whether we should be focusing on short-term shelters or long-term funding. What do you think? Is it right to be sort of redirecting those resources towards the short-term kind of triage funding and away from the longer-term housing?
Marissa, what the federal government should be doing, as the state government should be doing, is working with the local governments who actually have to execute, who have to administer these programs, and ask them what we should do, because they're the ones that have to deliver. And so for the federal government in DC or even Sacramento to all of a sudden change the game midway through the cycle disrupts what you're trying to do. And so we have to work with those who actually have to execute. Sometimes if you're only a policymaker, you don't know what it takes to actually deliver because you've never had to execute, you just pontificate. When you have to actually execute, you have to get things done. And I will tell you this, as governor, my commitment will be to every Californian who has a shelter over their head, you are not going to lose it. That's the way I'm going to help you in the counties and the cities make sure that you can tackle what you have before you. Then I'll work with you to make sure we both demand accountability from the people who are supposed to implement these programs for homelessness shelter, whether it's short-term or longer-term. If you need mental health care, counties are the ones that have to deal with it. I'll work with you to make sure we're actually delivering those services.
Thank you so much. Superintendent Thurmond, I want to talk, the secretary was talking about the county and locals leading on this. And one of the things we've seen is a lot of local pushback to state housing mandates. The governor's been very aggressive in going after cities and counties that aren't meeting their construction goals. Would you continue that?
I would. I think that we have to continue to build for our population. And part of the reason that we have a housing crisis, as you know, this state has not built the amount of supply that is necessary. And so because of that demand, the cost of housing has gone up. On the point about homelessness, I'm working on legislation that would get us $10 billion in this state to build affordable housing. And when we build that housing, and when it's housing focused on meeting the needs of the homeless, it must have components built into it that have mental health requirements for participation in mental health supports and substance abuse supports. If you think about programs like the Lau Family Housing Program that provides housing, they have a 90% success rate because they require the participants to engage in mental health and substance abuse programs. We have 10,000 homeless youth who are unaccompanied in our state, and I'm working on a program to get wraparound supports for them. If we don't help them today, they will become homeless adults tomorrow, whose needs will be even more complex. We have a lot to do. I'm prepared to do it.
Mr. Hilton, you are a proponent of free markets, the government getting out of the way. Would you continue the very aggressive housing goal push, and including lawsuits against local jurisdictions that don't meet their housing goals?
No. We need change on this issue in California, not more of the same. Look, obviously, what we're doing isn't working. We have the highest housing costs in the country. We have the lowest home ownership. That is not just an economic disaster, the fact that housing is the biggest component of any person or family's costs, the fact that businesses don't want to locate here because there's nowhere for their workforce to live. Housing costs are the #1 reason people are leaving our state. And it's emotional as well. The fact that you can't afford to buy a home. I remember when I was young and I just started my first business and managed to pull together the money to buy that first apartment. The feeling of achievement, we're taking that away from the next generation. We've got to move in a new direction. So, number one, we have to end the massive increase in costs to build housing that are coming from the climate regulations that make the cost of building something 3 or 4 times as expensive here as in a neighboring state. We've got to end the infill.
Your time is up.
We've got to end,
no.
sorry,
You have 2, sorry, finish your thought.
Directly to your question, we have to end the obsession with infill-only development.
Okay,
we have to allow building.
Thank you. Okay, Controller Yee. I want to ask you to jump back into this shelter versus long-term housing debate. Here in San Jose, the city is investing millions in tiny homes for people experiencing homelessness. There was a bill this year backed by the Bay Area Council that would have required counties to pick up half the tab. What do you make of this idea? Do you think that counties need to take a bigger role in this?
Well, I think this is housing and homelessness. It's got to be a partnership with counties and cities. And I think where we have failed with respect to a lot of the state funding that has been allocated is that we've not had a clear delineation of roles and responsibilities. And frankly, we have to be accountable to each other at different levels of government in terms of what we're delivering and how we're using the funds. And this is critically important with respect to counties because the issue looks very different from county to county. And so I think that's first and foremost. Sharing in the cost, I think, again, it depends on what the local needs are, but I think flexibility, we always talk about the dollars, but sometimes flexibility is more important than the dollars themselves. And so just the ability to use dollars in ways that can really meet the local needs. But look, this is a partnership. I think the way that we should be setting policy is based on what you all believe will deliver results. And so this is how I think the policy should be informed.
Thank you. Mr. Steyer, you know, I think we've gone back and forth in this state between local control and state mandates around both housing and homelessness. I'm curious how big of a role you see the state having in both of these policy areas, and how much control, do you think too much control has been taken away from locals?
So the biggest problem with affordability is the cost of housing. We have millions too few housing units in this state. And in order for us to drive down the cost of rent, we need more housing. In order to drive down the cost of houses, we need more housing. And a key proponent to ending homelessness is to have more housing. So the question is, how are we in fact going to get that to happen? And it's going to happen as a partnership. So let's talk about how that partnership will work. First of all, we are going to have to end over-regulation, and that's been started. We're going to have to redo zoning. But also, I'm talking about bringing $10 to $15 billion to the local level by ending this corporate real estate tax loophole. So as a partnership, I think it's important for the state to be bringing resources to the local level, but also working together with accountability. I understand how strapped counties are, and that.
Okay, thank you. He understands how strapped you are.
Well, I have a solution for it too.
Wonderful. All right, we are going to move over to public safety. And before we get into the questions, I want to focus on Prop 36. It was a huge ballot initiative last year, which obviously reversed some of Prop 47, a previous ballot measure, made it easier to charge for theft and low-level drug crimes as felonies. Before we get into the details, can I see a show of hands if you supported Prop 36? Yeah, if you voted for it or if you supported it. Okay, we got 3 of you. Great. We should say that was Katie Porter, Steve Hilton, and Javier Becerra. Oh, and Mr. Steyer. Javier Becerra, let's start with you. There's been a lot of pushback at the local level for the fact that there was not funding included in this measure, and there was also not any robust funding included in the governor's budget. Would you support more state funding, and if so, where would that money come from?
Absolutely. You can't make something work if you don't put the fuel behind it. Let me give you a quick example of what I faced when I was Attorney General. The governor and the state legislature wanted to save some money, so they were planning to cut the resources that the state provided for forensics labs. What they perhaps didn't realize that, except for a handful of counties in the state, Most of the 58 counties don't have their own forensic services. They rely on the state, the AG's office, to do all that work for them. Had we been cut, that would have moved the entire cost of doing all those examinations, all that testing to the counties. We fought that, we prevented the cuts. But you gotta be smart, because at the end of the day, it's not just the idea, it's not just the legislating, it's the delivery, it's the execution. And those of us who've had to balance budgets, those of us who've had to actually deliver results based on what the policymakers say, understand what it means when you have to execute. So when we passed Prop 36 and we passed it by a large margin, we now gotta fund it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Thurman, you did not support Prop 36. I wonder if you think we should be sending more money to locals to implement it, and if not, why?
Short answer is yes. It's the will of the people who've passed Prop 36, and it should be fully funded. I would make some modifications in how we send that funding, and the reason I didn't support Prop 36 is because, like you, I've been in many of our county jails, and I know that people in our jails have access to drugs and alcohol, and we shouldn't make substance abuse treatment be the place where you get it in prison. Now, I'm all for accountability. I've had my car broken into, stolen, my kids' cars 3 times. And that's why I've supported legislation that has passed that creates more accountability for those who are engaging in things like retail theft. I'm going to help to provide 2,000 more police officers in our state and more crime intervention programs. But I believe that the way we implement Prop 36 has to have a greater focus on funding for mental health. You don't get it in the jail, but that we have to have accountability. We have to have balance, both police programs and intervention programs in our state.
Thank you. Mr. Steyer, how would you like to fund Prop 36, and what would be the trade-off there? What would you have to cut?
So California has gone on this ride about public safety, going way overboard on 3 strikes, then going way overboard the other way, and Prop 36 is a middle-of-the-road way to try and come to a reasonable solution. The 2 things that I focus on are we absolutely have to have safe streets, and the cost of incarceration is incredibly high. So when we think about Prop 36 and the ability through that to provide treatment at the local level to avoid incarceration, that seems to me to be a place where the money absolutely has to come from the state to support that. Because to the extent we can replace incarceration with treatment, with proven treatment at the local level, that's going to drive down cost at the state level in a big way, which we're going to get money there that is absolutely real. So it's a very good deal for the state. It's a better outcome in every way if we can replace incarceration with treatment, and that's got to be funded.
Representative Porter, I know you supported Prop 36. How would you fund it, and what would that look like?
Prop 36 really illustrates why the status quo in Sacramento isn't working. Let's remember what happened here. There were real challenges. We heard about them from business owners, from both small and large. We heard about them from law enforcement. We heard about them from counties, that there was retail theft going on and that there wasn't enough treatment for people. This was a real problem, and people brought that to the entrenched interests in Sacramento. And they did not listen. They would not work on solutions to prevent retail theft from occurring in the first place. They wouldn't work on solutions to help prevent people from becoming addicted to drugs and alcohol in the first place. So what happened? When Sacramento doesn't listen to the people of California spoke. And we ended up with a proposition that I think takes aim at a real problem with a very, very imperfect solution. Now we've got cities and counties being told they have to do something with no money, which is just Sacramento, once again, not addressing a problem on the ground.
Thank you so much. Controller Yee, what would you do with Prop 36 and local funding?
Well, I would, at this point, really gather the input of counties in terms of just how much the state needs to fund, and I would focus on expanding the treatment capacity. When you look at what was in that measure, and I opposed it because of the lack of funding. It was another, frankly, false promise we were presenting to the voters, that once it was approved, that the solution would be right at our door, and it's not. And how many times have counties been faced with that, where the state has decided to either realigned or to pass responsibilities down to the counties with no funding. And for this to be successful, yes, expand treatment facility, but how do we do it to where it's real expansion, not just like having dollars for other things? We can be accountable for how many treatment slots are going to be established throughout the state, but also all of the other attendant costs, community supervision, mental health. This is what's going to make for a successful implementation.
Thank you. Mr. Hilton, you are up. I know you supported Prop 36.
Yep.
How should it be funded? What should the state be doing to assist locals?
Look, I think we have to just confront the reality that we have to go in a completely different direction on these big issues, because what we're doing isn't working. Just as on housing, we got to confront an ideology that says you can only build upwards, and that is why we're going to force housing into communities that don't want it. No. We've got to challenge that ideology. We've got to build outwards. On crime, we've got to challenge the ideology that has been pushed for so long. Criminal justice reform, decarceration, not holding people accountable. That's the disaster that's been going on. We've got to reverse the prison closure program that has put tens of thousands of dangerous, violent criminals either into communities directly or into county jails, which are then overcrowded, which means that you don't get accountability at the local level. That demoralizes law enforcement. We've got to go in a different direction. As to funding, you've got to look at the interplay between Prop 36 in November last year and Prop 1 in March. Prop 1 cut counties' funding for exactly the kind of treatment that we're all asking for.
Thank you,
We've got to
Mr.
reverse
Hilton.
that.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys all for all of your thoughtful responses. I want to talk about affordability. This is obviously the buzzword of probably 2026 as well as 2025. And I know increasing economic opportunity and affordability is important to everybody on this stage. Controller Yee, starting with you, what is one concrete policy or law change you would implement as governor to make life more affordable for everyday Californians?
Sure, thank you. A lot's been focused on housing affordability. That's what most Californians are concerned about. And from my perspective, the levers in terms of how we deal with affordability are pretty limited. They're pretty limited. We can drive, as a matter of policy, government can drive down costs. With respect to housing, it's the lack of housing stock, frankly, that continues to drive up costs. But it is also what we are producing in terms of the stock that hopefully can bring down those costs. And I actually want to bring back redevelopment. It will expand options in terms of where we build and how we can build. We can build in blighted areas and hopefully not have to deal with the expensive costs of the underlying land. We can talk about housing preservation. We can talk about reuse, adaptive reuse. But this is a way that we can also provide some needed capital for affordable housing. And then the other thing is time value of money. The state, we need to get out of our own way, streamline all of our affordable housing financing programs so we can break ground much earlier.
Superintendent Thurmond, what is your magic bullet? No, but how would you bring costs down?
Yeah, there are no magics, but surprisingly, I'm going to agree with Mr. Hilton. We have to grow the economy. Government can't just say costs are going to go down. People who've been making money off of high rents and being able to sell your property, just because we say change it doesn't mean that they're going to stop doing that. The market forces are what they are. Increasing supply will certainly help to bring down housing costs a bit. But it's hard to tell someone just stop doing it. And so I also want to thank my friend Mr. Steyer for closing that corporate loophole so that we have more money, so that until we figure out how we bring costs down in our state, that we can give people more money in their pocket. And I intend to provide a tax credit to all of you, to working people in our state, to have more money every month to pay for the high cost of gas, groceries, and housing. And of course, to continue to grow California jobs that pay well, as I mentioned, in computer science and technology, to fill the gaps in nursing, even in public safety. These are great jobs, and when in local communities, those folks are officers, they can help to pay for our local economies.
Thank you so much. Mr. Hilton, what is your plan to bring down costs for Californians?
Well, first of all, I think I'm going to join Tony in thanking Tom Steyer, but perhaps in a slightly different tone. We have the highest gas prices in the country, higher even than Hawaii, even though we have abundant oil reserves here in California, thanks to the climate extremism pushed for years by Tom Steyer. We have the highest electric bills in the country apart from Hawaii, double the national average, thanks to the climate extremism pushed by Tom Steyer. We have the highest housing costs in the country, thanks to the climate extremism pushed for all those years and with all those billions by Tom Steyer. The answer to making life affordable for the working class Californians who are being crushed by the Tom Steyer climate agenda is to do the things that I've proposed in my campaign. Reverse the climate extremism so we get $3 gas in California. End the obsession with wind and solar for electricity so we can cut your bills in half and get rid of the ridiculous environmental regulations so you can have a home that you can afford to buy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Steyer. Why don't you respond?
I would love to respond. Just so everyone knows, and apparently Mr. Hilton doesn't know, I wrote a book 2 years ago about how we win this called Cheaper, Faster, Better. When you talk about the cost of oil and gas versus renewables, just so you know, renewables are much cheaper.
Not true.
Excuse me, sir. The fact that he doesn't know that is scary. The future for California is, in fact, in technology in every one of these areas.
Okay.
The way we
You're
drive
gonna
down
get,
costs is new technology. We invent the future.
Okay, you're actually up next to answer the affordability question, so you may have another minute to continue. Oh, we need your mic back. There we go. Yeah.
Is my mic on? Can you guys hear me? Let's talk about housing. Because housing, there is no silver bullet, but it is an extremely expensive thing. And it's not that it's expensive, we aren't building it. Why not? People can't get permits. It's extremely onerous to get permits in this state. It takes way too long. I'm a believer in regulation, but this is way over regulation. And we've got to a point where regulation means stopping. That has to be addressed specifically. Zoning, we need to rezone, absolutely. So those are things that have been started. We have to be aggressive about it. There's also costs. It's very expensive to build in this state. And we're using 20th century technology. There is new technology for manufacturing housing that can get to half the cost per square foot, which means we can drop the cost of housing. We're the technology state. Let's use the technology. As counties and as supervisors, let me say this, bringing that $10 to $15 billion to you is going to enable you to provide the services for the new houses that are built in your counties.
Thank you. Representative Porter, I know you think about affordability a lot. It's one of the things you ran on when you ran for Congress. What is your plan?
Yeah, I mean, affordability is not a new issue for me. As a single mom, I'm the person who pushes the shopping cart and has to pay all the bills. So I don't need affordability talking points from a billionaire who doesn't have to struggle with figuring out how their children are going to be able to afford to live in California. We will when you have new people and young people, people coming to our state and our workforce, graduating from our UC and Cal State system and community college system, staying here, then you see the revenues in your counties and cities grow. So how do we help young people be able to choose California and to stay in California? Housing is huge. I got my start in this. I have a large housing plan that I ran on in the Senate, and I'm going to roll it back out again now. But I want to talk about something that nobody talks about, in part because we've never had a governor who actually struggled with it, which is the cost of childcare. The cost of childcare in California is more than the cost of college tuition, and you don't get 18 years to save up. You've got 9 months. New Mexico just made childcare free for all people in New Mexico, and we should do this.
Thank you, Representative. You may. 30 seconds. I assume that billionaire comment was about him. So.
Excuse me? The question for the people of California is not, what is the problem? The question is, who is actually going to deliver the results in a state that's had huge problems delivering results? And delivering results in the state of California means taking on entrenched interests that people are scared of. And I've done that historically. I've taken on all of the big entrenched interests and solved problems that people were scared to take on. And that's what I'll continue to do, because I don't know anyone a dime.
Mr. Steyer. Thank you. Secretary Becerra, let's bring you back in here. Talk to us about your plan to decrease costs, make life more affordable.
So it's basic Econ 1, supply and demand. We're going to build. Give me all your shovel-ready projects, and let's get those that are mired in regulatory purgatory and get them out and get them going, first and foremost. Expand the supply of housing. Secondly, we've got some great first-time home buyer and other projects and services that are available for those who can't afford to buy a house because they don't have the down payment. They're paying as much in rent as they would for a mortgage. They just don't have the down payment. Let's expand those down payment programs that help people actually buy the house. And then third, let's get the insurance industry to be transparent about how much it costs to insure your home, so we're not paying out the wazoo to keep our home once we get it. We can do these things, but we have to sit down. So quite honestly, the building industry has to sit down with the building trades. Let's figure out what a fair deal is so we can make sure that the carpenter and the laborer who's building that development and those homes actually can afford to buy them.
Thank you so much. All right, we got through all our topics. I'm very impressed, and I have a special treat. You all now get 90 seconds for your closing statements because we are on time. So according to this random draw beforehand, Secretary Becerra, you are up first. We got his mic? Cool.
Nope.
We got it.
There, thank you. So first, I say to each and every one of you who every day has to go back to your districts, your states, in your case, your counties, and deliver. Thank you for what you do, because oftentimes we ask you to do so much with so little. And so thank you for delivering for the people who brought you to this position of leadership. Secondly, as I said at the very beginning, I'm blessed. But I bet, like you, I'm also very tired. Tired of the chaos that comes from politics, whether from Washington, D.C., Sacramento, or even at home. Tired of the fact that too many of our families can't afford to pay even their utility bill. Tired of the fact that we pass a Prop 36 and now we're being told you can't fund it. It's time to get past that. And what I tell you is this: you have to have someone who's actually run things if you're going to get them done. It's easy to say what you will do. It's easy to serenade you and make you promises. But can I deliver the results? I ran the largest domestic public enterprise in the world. The Department of Health and Human Services is pretty big. How big? My budget was twice as big as the Department of Defense. Actually, you could put the Department of Defense's budget and the state of California's budget together, and my budget was still larger. And 4 years in a row, I balanced my books in the height of a pandemic and delivered results where, while we were diving in the number of people who are insured, we increased it.
Thank you
Elect
so much.
someone who can give you results.
Thank you so much. Mr. Steyer.
So I started a business in California, and it was successful, and I walked away from it 15 years ago because I was so grateful to this state for giving me the opportunity. And I'm running because the people of this state who've built this state and make it run can't afford to live here anymore. I'm talking about building 1 million new houses to drive down the cost of housing, to drive down rent and housing, and partially cure homelessness. I'm talking about taking on the public utilities, breaking up the monopoly, and driving down electricity costs by 25%. I'm talking about dealing with affordability, and I'm somebody who's brought results to California for 15 years. I'm someone who's taken on and beaten the oil companies, the tobacco companies, huge multinationals who are gaming our state taxes. I have put billions of dollars into Californian education and healthcare by beating those people and without charging Californian citizens one dime. I have provided results. I have also stood up to Mr. Trump, to Donald Trump for years, including the need to impeach program that I started with 1 million signatures to impeach him, but also piling on in Prop 50 so he couldn't steal another election. But let me say this, I am extremely optimistic and hopeful about what we can create here, about a successful state that brings everyone along. And that hope is forged in work and understanding and specific plans that I can accomplish.
Thank you so much. Superintendent Thurman.
Thank you, first of all, for a well-facilitated conversation about issues. Marisa, thank you all for being here and for what you do. In many cases, you all are on the front lines trying to make it happen for people who require everyday services, whether they be public safety or healthcare or human services. I come from local government, and having served on the city council in Richmond with my hometown Contra Costa County Supervisor John Joya and my neighboring county supervisor Chanel Preston Scales, I've served on the school board, I served as a legislator where I had the chance to serve with your first Vice President, Monterey County Supervisor Alejo, and working with these folks. What I've learned is government can be the engine for solutions to big problems that we face on an everyday basis. And at the local level is the bottom line. It's where the rubber meets the road. And I want to be your governor to continue to provide solutions to the tough, everyday problems that we face every single day. We have enough surplus property on school district land in every one of our 58 counties to build 2 million units of housing by the year 2030. We can provide down payment assistance benefits to those who want to buy a home and continue to live the American dream. I'm honored to be endorsed by many of your members, and I hope to be endorsed by many of you. Visit me at TonyThurman.com. No matter what, let's keep doing the great work together.
Thank you so much. Controller Yee.
Thank you, everyone. You've heard a lot this morning, but really the work that we have to do together is quite simple. It's about being in a partnership and trying to figure out a direction for California where we can continue to strengthen our communities and serve our most vulnerable. You do this every day on the front lines. You know how to do it, and frankly, sometimes I think the state kind of gets in the way. And so that local perspective is going to be very important in terms of the partnership that I, as governor, will want to have with local governments. I always say this to many of you, your jobs are much harder than any of the jobs that we have here up on the stage, because you are expected to deliver. But what gives me confidence about our ability to do this is this. You all know what works in your regions. You know your communities. You know how to grow your economies regionally. You know how to bring people together in terms of when the state does put mandates on you. And from my perspective, unfunded mandates have to stop. There's just too much that has been piling on top of you, one after another. And kudos, I just want to say to all of you, when we realign juvenile justice, thank you, thank you, thank you for the incredible work that so many counties are doing in this arena, particularly your probation departments, the strategic partnerships, and this is what gives me inspiration about what can be accomplished. And so as your governor, it's going to be about accountability. We've got to come clean with the people of California about where we stand. If we have to increase taxes, which I believe we will, we won't be able to borrow away out of our deficit. We're going to have to make the case and really show that we can deliver results. It's all about implementation, delivery. Let's do it together.
Mr. Hilton, you are up.
We're the biggest and most beautiful state in America. There's nowhere better than California. Like so many, many millions of people over the generations, I came here because I was in love with what California represents, the entrepreneurial spirit, the rebel spirit, dreamers and doers and builders. But honestly, we can all see we're going in the wrong direction. We've now had 15 years of one-party rule. And where has that left us? 50th out of 50 states on affordability. 50th out of 50 states on opportunity. It is time for change in California. It's time for balance in California. It's not healthy to have one-party rule for so long. You see where that ends up. We need a change. We need balance. We need someone with positive, practical ideas that will help the people who've suffered the most as a result of these 15 years of one-party rule. Working families in California, small businesses in California, small business owners like I was before. Positive, practical ideas. $3 gas, your electric bills cut in half, your first $100,000 free of state income tax, a home you can afford to buy. I've got the business experience, the government reform experience, and the love for this state to make it happen and to make this beautiful state that we all love so much truly golden again.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Representative Porter.
We do need change in California. We need to be honest with Californians about what we're going to do. Californians have heard promises from Sacramento, and they've heard promises from Washington, some of them positive and some of them deeply negative. But we need to be very, very honest about what our challenges are and what we can and can't do them. And then we need a governor who will hold Sacramento accountable to actually deliver on what is promised. I drive a minivan with a license plate that spells out oversight because I believe that it's not enough for career politicians to pass laws and pat themselves on the back at press conferences. I'm running for governor to change people's lives. That's not about passing a bill, it is about how it changes things on the ground. That's the work that I did in Congress. I was the one who went toe-to-toe with Donald Trump's CDC director to get free COVID testing for every single American. In a Republican-controlled House, I didn't just hurl insults, I got to work, passing laws to help bring down prescription drug costs, to make environmental permitting easier for people while still respecting our environment, to make voting easier and cheaper for our counties and municipalities to conduct. I am somebody who's not beholden to Sacramento or to any big corporations.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Let's give our candidates a round of applause. I really appreciate your time and engagement. There'll be a lot of time to talk politics in the months ahead, but I really appreciate that we could have a robust conversation about policy today. Thank you so much to the California State Association of Counties for putting this together, to our wonderful audience. From KQED News, I'm Marisa Lagos. My team includes Molly Solomon and Queena Kim. Special thanks to the staff here today at the hotel and CSAC, especially Ben Adler. And that's going to be it. The primary in this race is in June, so don't forget, register and vote. Thanks, guys. Thank you.